Okay, so my name is Nikita. Here at Christ Life Fellowship. This is a testimony of my conversion. It's best to read it. Josh actually convicted me the other day, and I rambled on for a half hour. But I went home and I took the time really to search a lot of my notes and some of the things I've forgotten about, and I just kind of put it in a more concise form. So I prefer to read it, and I hope it blesses somebody. A fool has no delight in understanding, but that his heart may discover itself. That's Proverbs 18:2. A fool has said in his heart, God is not. They have done corruptly. And that's Psalm 14, verse 1, in a different translation. And that was me, excited about doing my own thing. My only desire was to follow my desires, which I naturally did proudly, thinking that was what life was all about. I was what I considered a good person. I love people, and I love being with people. I had an open mind and a heart for everyone. I had everything going for me. I was in love with a girl, and it was mutual, and it was serious. I was in Colorado, and she was in New York that summer. I don't remember the exact date, but it was literally suddenly one afternoon, late June or early July of 2000, that I emotionally imploded. I felt terrible about who I was and about my future. I had never seriously contemplated anything beyond pretty much a career choice. I didn't know anything about sin or about God other than I believed there was a God. I cried a lot. I asked my friends with whom I was staying to take me to a Catholic church. I knew that's where God would be. I'm not certain what denomination the church actually was that my friend took me to, but I sat at an empty sanctuary bawling over a Bible, wishing that what I was reading was true. That very week, I changed my flight reservations and flew back to New York City to see my girlfriend at the time. We went to a Catholic church with her parents in sincere hope to find peace. The things that gave me the most comfort during those dreadful months from July to October of that year was thinking about what my girlfriend's born-again Christians friends told her about God. Ironically, I ridiculed with disdain those very same friends just a few months prior. I considered them closed-minded, ignorant fools who didn't care to understand anything about people. I lived with my girlfriend in New York the second half of the summer of 2000. In the fall, while at UMass, I started seeing a psychiatrist. I remember reading Sigmund Freud's books and books by others, but I wasn't finding enough. During one of my sessions, my psychiatrist asked me a curious question. This is what she said. She said, Nikita, if you could ask any person about your problems, past or present, who would it be? As I pondered, I started with some of the obvious, to me at least at the time, like Peter the Great. This was a man who opened Russia to the world. But then I realized that he'd probably just slap me around and tell me to get it together. As I continued to reason through options, I grew frustrated. I realized that any man I picked would be just a man. As enlightened as they may have been, they would have been men like me who could not get into my heart. I realized that the only one who could really help me was God. But I couldn't say that because it wouldn't be answering my psychiatrist's question, which was, if you could ask any person. We often forget that an answer like, I want to talk to God, is easy for those of us to whom he has revealed himself. But at that time, that answer was simply out of context. I wasn't religiously full of proper spiritual responses. I was just trying to honestly answer her question. Then, like dominoes dropped, this thought rolled through me. Well, there was a man who claimed he was God, and just as soon as that thought went through my head, out of my mouth came Jesus Christ. My psychiatrist was visibly taken back, but at this point, a bright light was shining in my head as I continued. I want to talk to Jesus Christ. I know he was a real person, and I know there's a lot said about him. I don't want some priest or some other man telling me about him. This is my life, and I'm scared. I want him in this chair next to me, and I want to ask him the truth about him. And if he's God, I would ask him the truth about me. And no matter how much it would hurt, I would do what he said. Sometime that same week, my girlfriend told me about a creepy Jewish guy, her boss, who was following her and he was creeping her out. One night, we were both at a party, and as I was leaning against the car in a parking lot, she said this, "Hey, remember this creepy guy I've been telling you about?" He came up to me, put his hand on my shoulder, and said, "You have headaches, and they're not from God. And if you let me pray for you, God will take him away." She continued, I didn't want to, but for some reason I let them. And he and another person prayed with me, and I felt the pain leave my head. Imagine what my thoughts could have been, considering I was an insecure 20-year-old with plenty of alcohol at that point and other things going through me. But all I could remember thinking was, if God can do that for her, he can do it for me. As a side note, the severity of her migraines, I remember at times trying to have a conversation with her, and I could see in her eyes she couldn't keep attention because of the pain she was experiencing. So when she said this to me, that she told her prescription away, I knew she was serious about what happened to her. Sometime that week, her boss called me on the phone to talk. He said, "Nikita, you struggle with neck pain, and it's not from God." I was fully alert at that point because I never met this guy, and I'm like, how does he know about an injury that I had that I never talked about? So as he prayed with me, I remember thinking, wow, is God in the next room? I never heard anyone talk to God like this. I threw away my prescription pills for a bladder issue that I had since I was about 16. Perhaps it wasn't wise, but at that time, I was just dumb enough to believe it would work. I haven't needed the medication since. This man invited me and my girlfriend and I, to his church in New Jersey. 4 days later, we went. This was October 1st of 2000. At this point in my life, I have basically repented of myself. I wanted the truth, and I felt that I was finally getting closer to it. The pastor preached on credit where credit was not due. He preached about God's grace through Jesus Christ. When the first call to the altar came, I stubbornly shut down. I was bitter and angry. Last call came and went, but I still had no intention to go towards the front. Suddenly, something leaped up inside me. Perhaps it was fear that I wasn't going to get another chance, or I may not have gotten another chance. And so I ran towards the platform with my hands raised high and surrendered to him. Jesus Christ came into my life that day, and scales came off my eyes. I felt like I woke up from a dream. I remember driving with my girlfriend on Jersey Turnpike, feeling like I found the secret that everyone would want to know. Having to learn John 6:44 the hard way in years following that no one can find this secret unless God reveals it. So on October 1st, the God of this universe had personally revealed himself to me in the person of the Holy Ghost as I accepted the testimony of Jesus Christ. One of the immediate impacts of this decision that was dramatic is how immediately I was delivered from alcohol and other things. It was like a spiritual birthday gift God gave to me. Trust me, not everything was wonderful, but alcohol and drugs was such a dramatic shift that my friends with whom I was staying with at the time could not believe it. They thought I was fighting it since I was the guy nursing a White Russian drink daily before my conversion. It was a radical change for sure. We attended Times Square Church in New York, but I needed a church around UMass. So we picked up the yellow pages and called the first non-denominational church on the list. Because again, I thought that's where God was. First time I came to Christ Life Fellowship was likely late October to early November of 2000, sometime at that time frame. I came from time to time, but was not committed. Not because I wasn't serious about God, I just didn't know any better. In the same way, the Lord wasn't personal to me months ago, 1 Corinthians 12:18, where Apostle Paul describes God's careful placing of his members in his body, was not real to me yet. I remember one of the Thursday night services, pastor's wife came to us in the parking lot. As I was telling her about all the awesome things that were going on in Times Square Church, she interjected and said, "Well, I believe you're supposed to be here." I remember thinking just how arrogant that was for her to do. But again, at that time, I didn't really know any better. I bounced from church to church very lovingly, but I didn't have a local body of believers I was committed to. All my friends at Times Square Church, including my girlfriend, were now getting baptized in water. They all had existing stories, and I was always uncomfortable because I just wasn't ready. I felt shameful when the issue came up because I had I had to answer the truth when people asked me why I didn't get baptized yet. And the truth was, I read Acts 8, and I committed in my heart that I would not go into the water until I had no doubts. And at that point, I still had doubts. I stayed with my dad close to Boston that summer. This was now 2001. Months passed, and one day during the summer of 2001, I prayed, "God, I think I'm ready." I was so excited because I felt the release in my heart. I was settled. I continued praying about the issue, saying, "Lord, I'm in no rush, but I really want to get baptized." I began to search for whom I would want to baptize me. I knew so many pastors at this point, but I needed this experience to be personal. I also needed a place to stay for my last year at UMass. On 2 separate occasions, when I came to Christ Life Fellowship, as I was talking with the pastor, he abruptly changed topics completely out of the blue to say, if you need a place to stay, we have a finished basement in our house. I remember walking away thinking he was a bit weird for it. Truthfully, I thought a lot of people were weird to me at Christ Life Fellowship, and I didn't always feel comfortable. But I did want the pastor to baptize me. On Thursday, August 23rd of 2001, still in my gym clothes, I decided to call my friend in Amherst to see if I could stay with him for the semester. But as I picked up the phone, a thought went through me as I was reminded about what Pastor kept saying to me on a couple of occasions that they have a place to stay. I was sort of convicted because I realized that the only reason I didn't want to ask him was because I didn't want any oversight in my life. But I resolved in myself to at least honor the man of God by asking him. So I called his house, and Pastor's wife picked up. She was cheery as always. For some reason, instead of actually asking her what I called to ask her about, I just told her, I'll see you in a couple of hours. Now, this was crazy because I had to go to work in the morning, and I was about an hour and 45 minutes away from the church. So I just made it, and as I walked in through the doors, I was greeted by Pastor's wife with the following words. "Oh, Nikita, hi. We're having a baptismal tonight." So at that point, I just said, "This is God. I need to be baptized tonight." She said, "Well, you're going to have to go talk to the man of God." I walked very quickly to find Pastor and shared my heart with him, pleading that he would baptize me. Now, I was ready for a no. I was ready for anything at that point, but I just had such a conviction that it was going to be that night. And this is what he said. He said, "Well, typically we don't do it like this, but I think you'll be okay." And that night I was baptized in the name of the Lord Jesus Christ. So on October the 1st of 2000, I accepted him. And on August 23rd, I was accepted into him. That night, I also asked Pastor if I could stay at his house. I stayed there about a year until he kicked me out to find my own place the following year. And so here I am today, continuing the faith alongside people I love at Christ Life Fellowship, still excited about what he's doing in my life and in my church. Not because I think we're any better than anybody. I just know that ultimately my pastor's wife was right. This is where God placed me to work out what he wants to work out in me. And this is my testimony of my conversion.